All right. Welcome to the LIVgreat podcast, where we talk about all things community and real estate, whether you're buying, selling, or just curious about what goes on behind the scenes. I'm Diane Crouch, local realtor and operator of the LIVgreat Real Estate team. And today I'm joined by Monica Ahrens, account executive at Vanguard Title. And so if you've ever wondered what happens behind the scenes once your offer is actually accepted to the moment that you actually get your keys, Monica is one of the people who makes sure that process goes smoothly. So we'll be talking about the importance of title insurance, how title companies protect buyers and sellers, and what happens behind the scenes before closing. So thank you so much for joining us, Monica.
Hi, Diane. Thank you so much for having me today.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us how you got into the title insurance, what drew you to Vanguard Title.
Yes, so I've been in the title insurance industry for over 10 years now, and I've always worked in the Washtenaw County market. I knew a sales manager at a local title company, and she's the one who recruited me into this industry. I've had a sales and hospitality background before this. And Vanguard didn't previously have a presence in Washtenaw County, so we opened an office here this past spring. And they've been in business for about 20 years, but I'm new to Vanguard as of this spring. So excited to share what Vanguard has to offer with our local real estate community. And it's been a great experience so far.
Awesome. Very good. So Vanguard's been around for a while, just new to the Ann Arbor, Washtenaw County area.
Exactly. Yep. They can issue title insurance in Michigan and in Florida, and their headquarters is located in Auburn Hills, Michigan, but they also have a couple of other offices in Shelby Township, as well as Livonia, and now our newest location, Ann Arbor. But our business model is close anytime, anywhere. So we do accommodate closings either online remote notarization at people's homes, their place of employment, local coffee shops, really what is ever easiest and most convenient for your client.
Awesome. Well, we're excited to learn more about that. So let's start with the title insurance basics.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about what title insurance is and why it's essential in the real estate process.
Absolutely. So title insurance is a little bit different than other types of insurance, such as home insurance, life insurance, or medical insurance. All of those types of insurances protect someone from something that could happen to them in the future. Contrary, title insurance actually protects homeowners from things that may have happened to their property in the past. So when you do go to buy a new property, you want to make sure that someone's not going to knock on your door and say that they have an interest in the property. And so that's kind of what the title company's main job is, to do title searches and verify the chain of title, and that seller that you believe to be buying the home from is indeed the true seller and is going to offer you clear and marketable title. So when you go to buy a house, you want to make sure that there aren't any outstanding liens on the property that are going to be passed along to, a new buyer. And also you want to make sure that that seller that you're working with has all of the interest in the property to sell it to you, so that you don't have issues while you own the land.
So basically, the title insurance company makes sure that the property can be legally transferred from one owner to another.
Correct. And so there's a pretty involved process of that. Sometimes they're called title searches, sometimes they're called title examinations. But there is a whole exam team at a title company that their sole responsibility is to search the public records and look for anything pertaining to that property. And they go back decades to make sure that there is, nothing that is going to stand between that new buyer and, owning that property outright.
Yeah, great. Are there any common, other than the fact that title insurance, it looks kind of backwards instead of future with other types of insurance, are there any common misconceptions that buyers and sellers have about title insurance?
So contrary to the other types of insurance that we mentioned, life insurance, home insurance, those are paid usually on a monthly basis or an annual basis. Title insurance is a one-time premium. So you're going to pay that at the time of closing, and it's based upon the purchase price of the property. And just to clarify, maybe I could have gone back to this, but there are two types of title insurance policies being issued at the time of a closing. So the owner's policy of title insurance is traditionally paid for by the seller, and it's going to benefit the buyer. And then there's also a lender's policy of title insurance that's paid for by the buyer, but that protects the lender, who's the one funding the mortgage for that property. And you just pay the premium one time, and it is based upon either that purchase price or the loan amount. So unless you go to refinance the property, in which case a new policy would be issued, you wouldn't be paying an ongoing premium. So that's something that maybe a lot of buyers and sellers wouldn't be aware of if they hadn't ever owned a home before.
Yeah. So instead of a monthly fee, it's just one time at closing.
Exactly.
Okay. Can you give us some examples of what issues title insurance protects buyers and sellers from?
Absolutely. So right now, I think in our industry as a whole, fraud is been on the rise. So we've seen deed fraud very commonly. Certain counties tend to see more of those types of things taking place, which means that those register of deeds offices are keeping a very close watch on what deeds are being recorded to verify that they are not fraudulent. But also right now we see a lot of people trying to impersonate sellers, particularly with vacant land properties, because there's not a house on the land. Someone sees, unused or, vacant land that isn't really being inhabited by anyone, and they may try to go and sell that, particularly when someone has passed away. There are fraudsters out there who kind of identify types of properties where, someone has passed away and they don't maybe know if it's in the name of a trust or if it's in an estate or what the process is, but I've seen it over the last couple of years on the rise. And we actually got a fraudulent purchase agreement. And, I went to go do our due diligence. We actually even Googled the property and saw that a local realtor had the property listed, but she wasn't listed in the purchase agreement. So I called her and she said, no, we haven't accepted an offer. And so, this seller person was just trying to sell the property that didn't even belong to them. And, that's why it's really important to work with a local reputable title company and work with local realtors as well, so that that you're being taken care of and someone's not trying to impersonate you or, someone in your family.
So in that situation, somebody is basically pretending to be the seller and they don't own the property, trying to get the sale to go through and get the money from that sale when they really have nothing to do with that property at all.
Exactly. And what I had found out from the realtor, who was in fact the listing agent, she had informed me that the true seller had passed away. So this person obviously hadn't known that quite yet and was trying to sell the property to get the funds of it. And I mean, that is also why local title companies have a lot of different measures in place to check someone's ID and their their name, their address, because, we've seen fake IDs come through our office before. And, we're not bouncers at a club looking at IDs all the time, but we look at them enough to kind of understand what's fake and what's not. But because technology has become so good on, faking someone's identification, we use certain technology to put their ID through it and make sure it is not fraudulent from another state or another country. And people have been caught, and it does create a lot of chaos. And, for someone who is the true seller of a property, it does make them feel violated.
Yeah.
And, that can be a scary thing. So it's just good for homeowners to be aware. And not to say you can't be owning vacant land, there's lots of places to be owning vacant land. You just want to make sure that when you do go to sell it, someone did go to the register of deeds and recorded a deed on your behalf, saying they maybe quit-claimed it to themselves. And then that's a common thing that we see, and it's easy to take care of. But we want to make sure that everyone's protected.
Yeah, exactly. So say everything is legit. We have a buyer that's gone under contract. They found the house of their dreams. They signed their purchase agreement, and then their agent sends that over to you and orders a title search. Tell us what happens next.
Yeah, so after we do that title search, we're going to produce what is called a title commitment. And that is going to be out for review for the seller and the buyer. Oftentimes, their realtors are the ones kind of sharing that with them. The lender for the buyer would also want to review it. But for instance, there could be a section on the title commitment that says there's certain requirements that have to be met in order for that property to transfer title. So if the owners had a divorce, maybe we're going to have a divorce decree. Or if someone had passed away that was still on title, we would need a copy of the death certificate so that we can record that with the Register of Deeds. If the property was in the name of a trust, we're going to do our due diligence to make sure that those trustees have the ability to sell that property. So once all of the requirements are met, and also, if they had outstanding mortgages or back taxes, those are all things that we as the title company would work with the seller on clearing prior to closing. And then once that is all set, all of those requirements have been met, we are going to work with the realtors and their clients on scheduling the closing. And everyone, we like to say everyone comes into the office to sign at one time, but busy schedules and life gets in the way where oftentimes we are sending a notary, like I said, to someone's house or to their office, or maybe they're in another state, so we may have to overnight documents, and then there may be a notary hired to go to them in another state. If the lender does allow it, then we can have online notarization where it's kind of like a very professional, high-level Zoom call, but we still do that ID verification and everything, and a lot of things they can sign online. And then if there is a wet document that has to be signed, we would overnight that or mail it. But in a perfect world, when everyone can come into the office, we'll facilitate the closing there. There'll be a closer who's going to notarize all of the documents. From there, we're also going to send anything to the Register of Deeds. So then in a couple of weeks after your closing, you'll then, as the new buyer, see that you are the true owner of the property and you can move forward.
So what I'm hearing you say is, in the past, they would consider a closing where both the buyers and the sellers all sat down at the table and everybody signed documents on the closing day, and that's a very traditional closing. But what you're saying is there's lots of different options now, whether it's some electronic options. Also, people can, go to a restaurant or a coffee shop or at their home. So Vanguard allows that flexibility to be able to close in different places at different times.
Absolutely. Because what we recognize, especially during COVID, is that some people's lifestyles or their jobs may not allow them to get out of the office at certain times. Here in Washtenaw County, there's a lot of people in the medical field working for our local hospitals, and it can be very difficult for them to leave for, an hour and a half at a time, which is why we like to take the closer to them if we need to. And, we can also accommodate, like I said, overnight options where we're sending the documents to them. Oftentimes, the person who's going to be signing, they may have a notary at their work. Even some people who are in nursing homes, they have local notaries there as well. But Vanguard will help and assist getting a notary to them if they need to.
Okay, it sounds like there's a lot of flexibility in there. So what tips do you have for buyers before the closing day or coming up to closing?
Yeah, so I probably am echoing what a lender might say, but lenders have a lot of requirements on their end, but they usually, one of their biggest things is to say, okay, don't just go out and buy a bunch of new furniture or a bunch of new appliances, because that can mess with their loan and how everything's been set up, by the lender. But the lender has to work very closely with the title company to make sure their numbers match. And they're working on these for, days and weeks at a time. So if a buyer were to go out and buy a bunch of new stuff for their home, that can affect their credit and, their financial state. And we certainly wouldn't want to postpone a closing because of that.
Right.
But, also I know buyers are excited and they want to get ready for the house. So there are some different things that, their realtor will, help suggest to them, such as, getting their water set up, their internet set up, the power just, if they're going to be getting occupancy on the day of closing, or a lot of times we see occupancy 2 weeks later, even sometimes 2 months later, depending on what the seller's requests were at that time.
Tell us a little bit more. You mentioned occupancy. So I think traditionally people think of closing day as where they exchange the keys. So you're saying that sometimes after closing, the seller may stay in the property. Tell us how the title company becomes involved with that process.
Yeah, so that would be something that the buyers and sellers have agreed upon and that their realtors have advocated on their behalf. And there would have been occupancy agreements written and signed by both parties stating that they were aware that there is going to be some sort of occupancy agreement. And then oftentimes the title company may be holding funds, for damage or repairs or things like that, because you certainly as a new buyer don't want to have given occupancy to the sellers and then you come in and, maybe there were some damages made. So that is why we as the title company are also an escrow agent and would hold funds to protect that buyer until they move in and get those keys.
Yeah. And then another situation where the title company can hold funds, I know for me personally, we had a septic replacement after closing. So talk a little bit about where the title company comes in there and they can hold for repairs and how that works.
Absolutely. So, if there was something like a large improvement or revision that had to be made, such as a well and septic, that is a very big expense. Certainly something very important for an incoming buyer to have taken care of. So we as the title company would hold funds for that. Oftentimes, the buyer is getting the work done, but then we're the ones paying, that contractor or that company who came in to do the work. They submit the invoice to us, we release the funds to them, and then if there is anything left over at the end, that would go back to the party. But we want to make sure that the work has been completed and has been completed to the buyer's satisfaction. And so there are a lot of measures in place to make sure that, the buyer feels comfortable and that, those contractors are also being paid for the work they do.
Yeah, great. So you've mentioned a lot about working with agents and the lenders. Tell me your thoughts on collaboration and how the realtor, the lender, and the title company all would work together as a team.
Yeah, so I think in a perfect world, it's really nice when all three of those parties are working cohesively together. I think because we're all trying to accomplish the same thing for the buyer. For instance, if it was a lender involved, we want to make sure that that buyer is happy. We want to make sure that they feel safe. This is probably one of the largest investments that they're going to be making in their whole life. So all three of us work together to make sure that everyone feels good about it and things are being done ethically. And I also think that on the seller side of things, the listing agent and the title company have to work together to make sure that we're, doing thorough title searches. We're getting the documents we need in a timely fashion. And I think when realtors have good relationships with title companies and then in turn with their lenders, it just makes the whole transaction go a lot smoother.
Yeah.
And I think here in Washtenaw County, we all do really value those relationships. And,
Absolutely.
I love working with you and your team. And, maybe some other markets may not see that value, but I think anyone buying or selling in, the greater Washtenaw County area can tell that everyone's working together well and that we're all really passionate about what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. I love working with you and the rest of your team, and then our local lenders too, because I agree. We're trying to get our buyers and sellers to their end goal, whether it's to purchase a new home, to sell a home, and the more collaboration between the parties, the better.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
I agree.
So let's just before we wrap up, kind of go through some fun things about Monica that we may or may not know.
Okay.
Tell me, coffee or tea, which do you prefer?
I like both, but I have to go with coffee.
All right.
It's pumpkin spice season, and I'm here for it.
Okay. Washtenaw County spot to unwind.
To unwind. Well, I love going to Maze. They have some of my favorite food. I'm a big Mexican fan, so I like that. But also really close to my house is Revel Run, and they are open like Thursdays through Saturdays, I think. And it's just a beautiful place to be. It's dog friendly, kid friendly. I've been hosting some happy hours there with local real estate professionals because it's just a really relaxing place to be with a beautiful view.
Yeah, it's lovely over there. And then let's wrap up with your dream vacation. What would be your dream vacation?
Dream vacation. Oh man, my husband and I really want to go to Alaska, and we would love to go on an Alaskan cruise, and I would love to see some moose and bears, and I think being safely on a ship to do some of those things would be wonderful, and I also love whales, so that's very high on the bucket list.
Yeah, I know you love to camp, right? Or maybe you don't love to, but you do camp.
I do camp. My husband loves to camp.
Okay.
I tolerate camping. I enjoy it when the conditions are nearly perfect. But it is a wonderful way to see certain parts of our state and even our country. We did a cross-country road trip a couple of years ago, and camping was a beautiful way to see things. I mean, we camped right on the Pacific Ocean at a couple points. But yes, he's really the camper in the family.
Cute. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today for our podcast. Any title questions, all things title, where can people reach out and find you?
Yes, the best place would be either on our website, vgtitle.com, or you can send us an email at tmonica@vgtitle.com.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Diane.
Yeah, and to our listeners, on our podcast viewers, join us next time. We'll be speaking with a lot of interesting community members. So we'll catch you next time. Bye.
Awesome. Bye.